Okay, so let's start. Thank you for not having your lunch and listening to me. Okay, so this presentation is about Oracle APEX cheat sheet. I'll wait a few minutes before everybody's in. So my name is Dimitri Gielis. I'm from Belgium. I could drive here. It's just 2 hours from where I live, so it's awesome. I really like this conference too. This presentation is basically things because I'm so stupid. I always forget things. The older I get, the more things I forget. So I try to write down those things, and this is what I have in this presentation. I have only 45 minutes, but I have about 65 slides. So we'll see how we do with time. I also want to give you some demos. So I would say it's lunchtime, sit back, relax. The slides are online already. You can just download it. It's a cheat sheet, so there's things that I don't remember, so I don't expect you to remember after this session. But the one thing that you have to remember is what does exist, and that you have some pointers. That's the only thing you need to learn from this session. So I'll walk you through the thing. So a bit about myself. I'm already for a long time in the APEX community. I really love the product. I use it since 2004. I'm really passionate about it, and my time is spent most with my company, APEX R&D. We also have a product called APEX Office Print. I actually will do another session tomorrow. It's a sponsored session, it's a commercial product about APEX Office Print. If you want to do printing in APEX, you know that it's not built in APEX, so if you need a solution, come to my session tomorrow. I also try to share my knowledge on my blog, so I will do a blog post about this session too, with a link to the slides. At the end of this presentation, there's a link to where you can download the slides too, and you can download them from the APEX Connect website too, I think. I'm also on Twitter. So the things that I typically forget are in a few areas. One is from the database. How do I create objects? Then SQL, PL SQL, and then APEX. I will spend most time on APEX, but for the database, it's just one thing that you have to remember. So basically, you have to create your objects, and I never remember how do I need to create table. I remember this, but then I need to do indexes. I need to create my triggers. I need how do I do that? So the solution there is just use Quick SQL. Who does not know Quick SQL? Okay, a few people. So let me quickly show you that because it's really something that can help you. So go to apex.oracle.com, Quick SQL. Quick SQL will be built in APEX 18.1. And today it's already available as a packaged application. So you already have it in your own environment. So what this thing is doing, you can just type in a Markdown type language, and it will basically generate your database objects. So let me quickly show you. So here I can say, I want a table called departments. I have location, I have a name, I have a country. So while I'm typing on the right, it's generating me my code. Now I have another table called employees with a foreign key to departments. I have my first name. I have a hire date. So while I'm doing that, and it's really smart, it sees that there's a date because the date is in my, here. I can also have numbers. So really, really good, I think. So this is already nice, but the real power is if you want to do, for example, auditing. So you can just say, I want audit columns, or audit call. Well, I forgot the syntax, so you can just click on syntax here, and then you have here all the things that you can use. So audit is on the table, but there's somewhere here. Like I had this first, so, okay. So here, so it generated me this, and it also generated the triggers that come with it. No, the issue is, if you know a little bit of Apex, like the user, that's not the Apex user, so they built something for that as well. I think it's Apex true, and then it will do like syscontext. If you have an Apex session, it will do the Apex user. So that's really quick about database objects. That's what I use now. And here again, there's a cheat sheet inside this tool even. So you can do that. So that's database objects. Any question? You can ask questions during the session, okay? Okay, let's go to SQL. And again, like, we don't have much time, so this is one of the more frequently used SQL statements I use that I typically forget. One is I need a comma-separated string, or like colon-separated string. How do I do that again? Okay, there's a function called list aggregate, list ag, and then you have like a delimiter, and then this is what I typically forget. Within group, and then you can do like the order by clause. Here's an example of that. So this thing will just generate me like a record of strings. I have an example in Apex where this is really useful. Let's look at the more powerful features in SQL, like analytical functions. Connor talked a little bit about it, but the main syntax that you have to remember here is like you have an analytical function. This can be sum, lag, lead, you have different kinds. Then you have some arguments, and then the most important part is over, like that word, over, and then analytical clause. Alex has a really good presentation about analytical functions too, so if you go to his blog, you can see it, and Chris is talking about that on Ask Tom a lot. So, no, this is the main thing. No, when you go to analytical clause, you have different things, and whenever you see like a straight line like this, like everything that's on top of that is optional, so you don't have to use, but you can use. So there's a query partition clause, an order by clause, and then when you use this, you have a windowing clause. When you look at query, the keywords are partitioned by. When you have order by, you do order and then something, and windowing clause is even more complex. Okay? So let's look at an example. So where we use it. Lag and lead, I always mix those. Lag before, I want to get the record before. So here I have, what is the previous salary? So I have lag, salary, over, and I order by hire date. So all those are ordered by hire date, and what is the previous salary? So Tobias' previous salary is 3,100. Co doesn't have a previous salary because there's no record there. The same with lead. Like what is the next, or what is after, like what is the next hired person? So this one is the last one, there's no next one. Where it becomes more interesting again is here with row number. Like everybody know, well, so there's row num, but you can have like an analytical function called row number, which I use quite a lot as well. So here I want to see all the row numbers, and I want to partition by department, and then I order by salary. So I get like 1, 2, 3 for the top salaries ranked for that department. Like, this is really hard to read, right? So there's so much SQL functions, so many SQL functions. There's a cheat sheet, and there's like a nice one here, which you can just download. You could print it, you can put it next to you, and you can look things up. I'll come back to one example in a minute. This is what Connor said as well, and I use that a lot as well in my classic reports. Group by, and then I use a special clause ROLLUP, because that will generate me my sums. So in the classic report you can have a sum, but you can also do it with SQL. And just this group by, most people know that, but just put ROLLUP there, and you have a very nice output. Regular expressions is another type where I go, which I typically forget, like what is it again? How do I use it? I remember like regex replace, and then this is what I typically forget. Or I forget like which types are there. And here this is a nice cheat sheet which you can download again. If you want to know more, Alex session tomorrow will go in that respect. I think it's really powerful to use regular expressions. Like in my example here, I just want the numbers out of a string. So you can say what to Alex. Okay, let me quickly show you in APEX. So I have a sample application which I make available as well. So here's my SQL. Here's basically a shuttle. And for this shuttle, I want to have like the top 3 salaries for every department, like the top salary of every department. That person I want to have pre-selected. So if that's your requirement, we go to, this is my SQL query, so this will populate the shuttle. And then I have a default value, and here I use a combination of row number, here, row number, with list aggregate. And that will generate me like a colon separated string. So I can, let me go here to SQL Workshop. And typically, like you build this up, like, so if I just run this first, so here I get like all the, per department, I get like the e-names, I get the salaries, and I get the rankings. So the lowest, the highest, I could change the order by salary descending, then I get the highest ones. So this one is first in this department, in the second, in the department 20, it's Scott is first. And then if we combine it with like the list aggregate, and we only use the first ones, oh, sorry, wrong copy paste. Okay, so now I have King, colon, Scott, colon. If I don't want this, I get like all of them. You see? So I find this useful in APEX. I use that a lot. So I'm going really fast, right? I said sit back, relax. Any questions on that part, SQL? So it's just the things that I use a lot that I want to get across for you to investigate. Let's look at PL SQL. Only 2 things. So who is putting actually documentation in front of their functions and procedures? Yeah. So that's good, yeah. Okay, so here, this is, I have a procedure as well, and like you have so many parameters, so it's a nightmare. Like, do I really have to like do all this, and then I have to remember? Like, I never remember what I have to put here. Like, this is like, okay. So I use Visual Studio Code, and there's like a plug, like an extension for it called PL SQL, and with a combination, I can say doc. And the documentation is there. You see? So that was fast, no? So I have nothing. I go here, I say doc, and bam. So, and it's smart. So when I do something here, like DOAG in number, you see? Yeah, the description, and that's like, but so the description, we want to get rid of that. So let me see if I can quickly do that. So who's using like Who is using that? Like column selection? Like, we need to get rid of all the descriptions. So I basically did a column. So normally you do like multiple selections, but you can say like, get me everything here, and then I can just, and then this is a parameter, and that's your documentation, right? Okay, so that's the only thing you have to remember is like, see in your environment how to generate a snippet. A snippet or the generation of the documentation. If you create a documentation in a Java doc format or PL doc format or PL MD doc, like there's an open source tool to generate the documentation for you later. And the second thing to remember is use reusable components. So, for example, we always use an error package. In APEX, there's an error handling function, which you can define, and it's most of the time it's the same. And we actually ship it with APEX Office Print. So even if you don't need to do printing, you can go to our site, you can download the application, and you will find this package in it, the error package. And it will basically, every time there's an error in your APEX application, it will log it into a table. So, and it is smart, like, it comes from Patrick Hoof, did some blog post about it, and we extended it a little bit. It can give you more user-friendly errors to your customers as well. Instead of like foreign key validation error, it will say like, a better description of the error. Okay? So those two things to remember for PL SQL. Documentation, find something to generate it really fast, and then try to use reusable components. There's also OS utils. I think on the lightning session, Martin will talk about that. Okay, so now let's go to APEX. I have 30 minutes left. So the ultimate cheat sheet for APEX is one thing you have to remember. APEX Dictionary, select star from APEX Dictionary. That will basically show you anything from your APEX applications or from your APEX environment. So if you want to know which pages are used within my application or which pages are referenced somewhere, which pages are not used, which lists am I using, you find it here. Either you do select star from APEX Dictionary, or you go to Workspace Utilities, or you go to Application Utilities, and then you have Application Express Views. And it gives you an explanation what it is. So that gives you an opportunity, a way to query your environment. Let's go to the next thing, substitution strings. When do you use what? And like bind variable, basically, whenever you can use bind variable, use them. Substitution strings in HTML, you cannot use bind variables, so you can reference an item value with ampersand dot notation. If you are in a PL SQL package, how do you reference that? The bind variable, you cannot use it there, so you can use the v function. And in a template in HTML, you can use cross item cross, or in your reports, you can use that as well. Now, this is, I do remember this. This is where I have a hard time. So APEX made some interesting things, especially around security and when you reference items. So when you want to escape reserved HTML characters, you can do ampersand item and an exclamation mark HTML. I have an example of that later. If you don't want to do it in here, but you want to do it in your PL SQL code or in your SQL, there's a package called apex escape.html. So this is escaping. This is escaping reserved characters and HTML attribute for your reports. But here, this is interesting as well. And this is what I sometimes use. So removes HTML tags. So sometimes you want to give the user like a rich text editor. But for some reason, you don't want to show it in the report at some pages. So what you can do is, you can reference the item, you can say strip HTML, or you call this It's undocumented, www flow utilities.strip HTML. Hopefully one day Apex Util will serve this as well, but this will basically strip out all the HTML. And I have an example of this in a minute. The same for JavaScript, so you can have a look here. And next to like all those substitution strings and the special things you can do with it, there are some built-in substitution strings. So this is a cheat sheet for the most important ones, I think, that Apex serves, like application ID, application alias, app images, app page ID. So, but I have an example of that. So any questions here? You will see it in a demo in a minute. There's one other thing that I want to talk about in regards to substitution strings or the way you use them. I often use the OAutil package as well, for example, to get the remote address or like the host. Somebody comes in as DOAG.apexrnd.be, or somebody comes in as kscope.apexrnd.be. I want to know this. So I use getCGI.env and a remote address or remote host or something like that. Let me do a quick demo on this. So here, this is, we reference, we have an item where we have like bold, hello Apex R&D. So if I just do ampersand, and this is the item name, I get this, like, it's because, like, it's not interpreted yet by Apex. Here I use strip HTML. I don't see the B tag anymore. Here. Now let's look at the report. So here I have a normal one, and yeah. If you go back to your thing, so what's the difference between the first and the second one? Yeah, there's no difference here because like the Apex engine, I think in previous versions this would be bold, but now it's like escaped. I think they made a change there. So it's not interpreted yet by the Apex engine or the browser at that stage. So at this stage, like, this is the same now. In some cases, I guess if you want to make sure that is escaped, you can use ampersand HTML. Let's look at the report, because here it's more obvious. So let me go first in the report itself. So what I have here is, I have my bold tag, Apex R&D, as normal. Here I escape it, and then I just have nothing here. But what I will do in those in those columns, I reference the item. So I reference this value normally. Here I reference it, but I escape it. And here I strip the HTML out of it. Okay? So if I look at this again, so here, this is the normal one. This is the escaped version with the package. Okay? So it's escaped. And also, like, over the time, Apex did a lot on security and like escaping. So by default, everything is escaped now. All your columns are escaped. So you have to go to your column and then somewhere here, escape special character, is set to tip like yes by default. I turned them all to no just to show you what it is. So even if it is turned to no, like this is escaped. Here we reference this item, so it's normal, it's interpreted, it's bold. Here we escape it again, so we see the raw HTML. And here we strip it. Okay? A bit lower, here I use app page ID. Okay, I see 3. I use app title, built-in Apex strings, which is Apex Connect 2018, which is my title of my application. Here I do print CGI.env. So here I get all those things. So this is what you can reference. If you want to know the host, you can reference that. and you see all the things that you have here. If you want to know the browser or anything like that, the IP address they come from, so you can reference this. If Apex doesn't provide it as an application item or like a built-in substitution string, you can reference it as well. So here I get the host, and if I show that code, so I first print it, so I see what is there, and then I just get one value. Okay, makes sense? Are you hungry yet? Hungry for more? Okay, so let's look at the Apex URL. And I do remember the Apex URL. In the last 14 years using it, I pretty much know that I need to have like 4 columns before I use my page item, like reference the page items, etc. But while I was doing this presentation, there are some things to think about. So let's look at the first one. So the application. So the URL is always the same. So if you didn't see this before, like we are talking about this. And on the internet, whenever you see this, you know it's an Apex application. Now, there's something special with this. If you know how the Apex URL is constructed, you can do a lot. So the application, basically we can put in there 1. So we go to the for application 1. We can also use ampersand dot notation. There's a built-in substitution string for the application ID. So whenever we generate a link and we want to stay within this application, we use ampersand app ID. You don't use the same, like you're not putting like 1 or 101 or something in there. Because if you export and import into another environment and you have another application ID, it doesn't work anymore, your links. So use ampersand app ID. Or you can use the application alias. No, and here's the thing. Who has ever seen like this error? The application alias ptrack cannot be converted to unique application ID. Who has seen this? Okay, a few people. So when this happens, like I export an application, and when you import the application inside the same workspace, Apex recognizes that, well, you already have an application alias. I will do like _1 or something, or underscore a number to the application alias. So they are unique. However, if you use this Apex export and you import into another workspace, Apex doesn't know or doesn't check that. So it will keep the application alias. Now, in my redirect rules, whenever you go to apexrnd.be or apexoffsprint.com, it goes to like an alias. Now, if I copy that application, it doesn't find a unique application ID where it should reference to. So you get this error. Now, there are 2 ways to fix this. Either you search for the application alias, and you change it, you make it unique, or you specify the workspace. And there's a special tag for that, like %c equal, and then the workspace name of that application, and then it works. Okay? I didn't know that. Let's look at the page. The page, similar as the application. You can put like the page number. That's fine. Or you can reference the page you're on. This one, I always forget, like app unique page ID. So this is something behind the scenes that Apex uses. It gives you a unique string. Whenever you view that page, it generates a unique ID. And you can use it for debugging, you can use it in a request if you want to make sure it's not cached or something like that. You can use this built-in substitution string. You can use an alias as well, app page alias. You can use that. Okay, session. &session is the short version, &app session ID is the longer version to reference the session ID. There's a special session 0. And you should be able to reference that with app session visible. So if the user sees session 0, so this is for public pages. You make an Apex application and you want to put it in Google. You don't want Google to index constantly like new session IDs. So you just want that they see page 0. But how are you referencing other pages in your navigation? So in your navigation, you put page 0 as well. Or you put app session visible. Whenever there's like a session, it will use page like session 0. Whenever there's whenever you're logged in, it will still work. If you would hard code session 0, you would need to log in. So this is like a special thing. It will look at the cookie. It's very smart to do that. Now, in my case, it didn't always work. So I don't know if it's a bug. I have to check with the Apex development team. But know that this exists as well. App session visible. Okay, the request. What can you put in the request? Like this is used by Apex. Whenever you hit a button, your request is filled in. We can set a request manually as well. It's in the advanced section when you create a link. But more interestingly, you can create you can call an application process. In most cases, if people ask oh, I want to download a file, I want to download a PDF. What I typically do is I create an application process and I have some snippet, again, it's in this cheat sheet because I always forget it, to download a file. And I'll have a demo of that. Tomorrow I will talk about, in the lightning session, I will talk more about interactive report and how to call an interactive report. You can use the request area as well. And then more interestingly here, a feature which was requested many years ago and which was put in I think 2 years ago, Apex clone session. So within your session, you want to have another screen where you can navigate differently without impacting that session. So if you put in the request Apex clone session, you have 2 sessions. Well, you have the same session, but 2 different session IDs, and you can work independently. So you can have 2 tabs if you want, or 2 windows. I have a demo of that in a minute too. Okay, debug, you can put a yes, no. There's also the level you can put in there. I can show that. Clear cache, there are some things here. App and session. That's what I typically forget. If I put app in, all pages, all application items, and user sort is gone. I can do that. If I put session in, if my Apex application exists out of different Apex applications underneath, like Apex itself, you have SQL Workshop, SQL App Builder is application 4000, SQL Workshop 4500, but they look the same, it's all Apex. If I want to clear all the session values, use session. Pass item names, what some people on the forum have issues with. If they want to pass colons in there, you have to escape those. Interactive report, there's a way to do something like that, but I will talk about that tomorrow. And then printer friendly, you can set to yes and no. Okay, if you think that's everything that there is for the Apex URL, it's not. If you want a different language of your application, you can put &plang and then the language NL, EN, DE. And then another interesting one is tracing. If you want to trace your file, you can use &ptrace equal yes. Okay, so I talked a lot about the URL because you use it, or at least, sorry, I use it a lot. And I typically use Apex util prepare URL, and then I specify this. And I'm used to all this, but sometimes you make errors because you forgot a colon or something like that. Now, what not many people know is that there's another thing that you can do. Instead of Apex util prepare URL, you can use Apex page get URL. And you can use this package, and it will return you your URL. So you specify the application, the page. They are optional, so the default is the application you're in. So this is a really good way of generating strings too, or URLs. Apex page.getURL. So whenever you work with URLs, you have more things to look at. And this is just a list. Whenever you download this presentation, you can have a look at that, what it is doing. There's one interesting thing from Steve Feuerstein as well, what he's using with DevGem, API to generate URLs. You can have a look there too. No, here, the JavaScript one, I sometimes use it. I have a region, it's inline dialog, but there's no dynamic action to say, like, show me this dialog. So I always have to do, okay, open modal and then a static ID of that region. And I'll show that in a minute as well. Okay. I'm just running through the slides so you know what I will cover in my demo in a minute. Whenever you do AJAX, I have a hard time to remember this. APEXServer.url, I can call that, or APEX more, like this is what I use more, APEXServer.process, and I call a process, either an application process or like a process on my page, an AJAX process. I pass in some variables, I can pass in page items, and whenever I'm successful, I will do something. Now, whenever you do this, like the x01, how do you reference this? You can reference it with apex application.gx01. And I have an example of that. If you follow my blog in August last year, I did a blog, like a series of blog posts on multiplication table project. And there, basically, I generate a diagram, like 1 multiplied by 1, 2 multiplied by 5, and like random things. And I generate this grid, and it's all Apex items. So how do you reference those? It's with GF01. So this is an array, where the first one, GX, is just a value, the F is an array. Okay? APEXMail.send, it's logic, like P2, P from, P subject, P body, and P body HTML. But then if you want to do attachments, okay, you have to use a number here or a variable, so you can reference the variable whenever you do an attachment, and this is what I forget. Like attachment, it's the blob, the file name, and the MIME type. This is to download the document. So I want to download a PDF, I don't want to download an image. This is the code for that. Let me go to some demo, because it's hard, right? Yes, it's a cheat sheet, so it's all stuff. Okay, so ampersand app page ID, it's for here, my unique page ID. So this was 107, I refresh and I get a different page ID. My app session is this, my session visible is this. Normally, if I would go with a public page, then this would be, and I would call page session 0, this would stay 0. For me, it didn't work, but that's what's in the documentation. Okay, here, get file. So I click on this button and I get a file. So let's look what that is doing. So get file, redirect to page in this application. I call the same page I'm on. I could have done this as well, app page ID. And in the advanced section, I do request application process equals get file. Now, in this application process, I have that code that you can just copy from the slide. And here, I select from my table, and I can pass some variable if I want to. And then here's my code to download. And then you get the effect whenever I hit this. It's downloaded, okay? Sorry? It's a PDF. In this case, it's a PDF, but this is the most important. Like, you can set the MIME header, and if you set octet stream, then your browser will download. If you do application PDF, there's a chance that your browser will open it. It depends on the browser, but it will open the PDF straight away. So. But yeah, that's what you can do. Okay, clone session. So here I open another page, and this is my session here, this is my session here, and I can now do things separately. Like, I'm not influencing this thing. So this clone session, So here, the only thing you have to remember is this, and you use some, I'm in this application, I'm in this page, I'm having this session, but this is my request. Okay. Let's see what else did I have. Okay, my request, so this is Ajax. Looks like I have a mistake here. So my request, what is this doing? It's submitting the page. Oh, okay. So it's here that I want to go next. JavaScript API. So here I have some examples of APEX navigation dialog. To open that, open in a new window. Typically, like you can do window.open and then equal and like a URL, or you can just do APEX navigation, open a new window, and you give the URL. Okay. This is the pop-up. Here's a redirect. I want to open like a new window. I do that here. I want to show inline dialog. And this is where I have open modal. So when I click here, so here's my inline dialog, and it has like the template inline dialog. And whenever I click show inline dialog, I have here JavaScript, open modal, and then the static ID. Let's go here. This is the call Ajax process. So what is happening here? Whenever I call this button, there's a dynamic action going off, and it's calling some JavaScript. It's calling APEX server.process, and this is an Ajax process that it will call, and it will pass in those things. Then whenever it's successful, it will do an alert, and it will set this item with a value that I got back. Where is this Ajax callback or this process defined? When you go to processes, Ajax callback, here's my Ajax process. It gets the values that I passed in, and it's doing something here. So, call Ajax process, x01 was hard-coded, and item 1, so this one is DOAG 18. Okay, I have only 3 minutes left. The rest is more for you to, like some tips, like not many people use this. Like there's so much help inside APEX itself. So whenever you're in the builder and you click on one of those things, there's a help section here and you get new feedback. Like this is an explanation of what this feature is doing within APEX. I find it really useful. Universal theme, if you want to know like which options do I have for cards, how does it look when I use this component, go to apex.oracle.com/ut or go to your packaged application, universal theme sample application. You'll have a cheat sheet for your universal theme. If you're in a session and you want to generate like a new APEX application, or you're discussing an APEX application with your customer or the business user, you can go here and you can show them some components. Really useful. If you want to be more productive, there's a keyboard cheat sheet from Scott Spendolini, which you can download. There's also a plugin cheat sheet. And that was it. Why did you laugh, Alex? Okay, so we all want to have lunch, right? So what did I hope you sat back relaxed and you have at least got some pointers and you have this slide deck. When you go to slideshare.net, my name, and an Oracle APEX cheat sheet, you will find this slide straight away. So we saw a database, some things I do there. Quick SQL, most important thing to remember. SQL, really powerful language, which is not utilized enough, I think. PL SQL, we saw how to generate documentation, reuse some components, and with APEX, we spent some time on some cheat sheets there too. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a best conference, and enjoy your meal. If you have any questions, I'm here, so you can ask.